Welcome, everyone. We're diving deep today into the life of Dr. Kai-Fu Lee, a real giant in the AI world.
Definitely a major figure.
And we've got excerpts from his autobiography, AI Superstars.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, it's really amazing.
Looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too. It's packed with stories and insights about his journey, from childhood in Taiwan to all his work at Apple, Microsoft, Google, and even beyond.
What strikes me is it's not just about tech.
Right.
It's really a human story, too, about like the power of education,
Yes.
adapting, and navigating cultures.
Absolutely. So let's rewind all the way back to his childhood.
Okay.
Imagine being 11 years old and moving from Taiwan to Oak Ridge, Tennessee,
Wow.
the town that helped build the atomic bomb. Talk about culture shock.
That's a huge change. Yeah.
Huge. And even before that, he was already showing his independent side.
Oh, really?
Like he would literally turn back the clocks at home just to stay up late.
Oh.
And get this, he wrote a letter to his principal with his left hand to call out a teacher he thought was being unfair.
Wow. Bold move.
I know, right?
It seems like his upbringing really encouraged that boldness.
Yeah.
His mother had a very liberal parenting style, which was unusual in a culture that values obedience,
Yeah.
She let him think for himself, even sent him to private elementary school at a young age.
Interesting.
That really set the stage for his leadership later on.
Makes you think how those early things shape us, right?
For sure.
And even though he struggled with English at first, he ended up excelling in Oak Ridge High School.
That's impressive.
There's this great story about his math teacher, Mrs. Benita Albert, who saw his potential. She gave him free private lessons and even brought him to her college classes.
Wow. Talk about dedication.
I know those mentors make all the difference.
They really do. Inspiring.
Now, fast forward to college, he starts at Columbia University,
Okay.
thinking about law and math at first. But then sophomore year, he discovers computer science, and bam, like a light bulb.
There it is.
It's funny, though, before that, he was already doing entrepreneurial stuff.
Really?
Like creating a satirical school newsletter,
Yeah.
and then a T-shirt company with friends advocating for longer lunch breaks.
Nice.
They even had a dachshund in the design,
Cute.
and they won Company of the Year for it.
That's amazing.
I know, right?
That entrepreneurial drive was there early on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, he also got into philosophy,
Oh, wow.
comparing Eastern and Western approaches,
I see.
showing that early curiosity about different perspectives, which became so important in his career.
Makes sense. Bridging tech and culture.
Exactly. Now, college wasn't all work, though.
Of course not.
He tells some hilarious stories about his roommate and best friend, Russ.
Oh, yeah.
One Christmas break, they were so broke, they lived off of 20 homemade cheesecakes.
I can picture it.
Right.
Even brilliant minds need a sugar rush.
They do.
Yeah.
But those shared experiences really build bonds.
Absolutely. Now his journey takes a more serious turn during his PhD at Carnegie Mellon.
Okay.
That's where he starts working with Professor Reddy on groundbreaking speech recognition tech.
Fascinating.
They achieved a 96% accuracy rate, which was mind-blowing back then.
Wow.
Yeah, it was cutting edge.
And he wasn't just about theory.
Right.
He was drawn to the real-world impact. So even though they offered him a prestigious position at Carnegie Mellon, he jumps into the corporate world at Apple.
Wow, so he wanted to put his innovations into action.
He did. He wanted to change the world, one voice command at a time.
I love that.
But his time at Apple wasn't all smooth sailing.
Oh, I bet.
He arrived during a tough time for the company. And even though he had some wins bringing speech recognition to Apple products, he starts seeing cracks.
Interesting. And this is where his insights about Apple's struggles compared to Microsoft come in.
Exactly. He's seeing firsthand the challenges of innovation in a big corporation.
Right.
He tries to sound the alarm, proposes new departments and strategies for interactive multimedia.
Did they listen?
Not really. Most of his ideas were dismissed. He even wrote a whole report, How to Revive Apple Through Interactive Multimedia, but it mostly fell on deaf ears.
That's a shame.
It is. He also suggested a radical idea, reorganizing the Advanced Technology Group to focus on products instead of just research.
Interesting. So he was seeing a disconnect between the cutting-edge tech and what users actually needed.
Exactly. And this probably led to his later emphasis on user-centric design.
Makes sense. Technology should be intuitive and serve a purpose.
Absolutely. So, feeling disillusioned, he heads to Silicon Graphics SGI.
Okay.
His division dives into interactive TV and 3D tech. Pretty cutting edge at the time.
It was.
There were some early successes, but then comes this ambitious project called Cosmo.
Cosmo. Tell me more.
Well, it was a 3D internet experience, kind of like the immersive world of Avatar.
Wow. Way ahead of its time.
Exactly. The tech wasn't quite there and users weren't ready.
So it failed.
It did, and this failure hit him hard.
Yeah.
Not just because the project flopped, but because it led to his division being bought out and people losing jobs.
That's tough.
He took it to heart, even struggled with depression.
It's understandable.
But reflecting on it, he learned some profound lessons about leadership and empathy.
So it was a turning point for him.
It was. He realized leadership isn't just about pushing for innovation.
Right.
It's about understanding the human cost of your decisions. Responsibility, compassion, building a supportive team.
Those are valuable lessons.
They are, and he carries them throughout his career. So from groundbreaking research to the lows of project failure, it's been quite a ride.
It has, and he's just getting started.
And now he's taking on this huge challenge,
Yeah.
building Microsoft Research Asia from scratch.
This is where his understanding of both Eastern and Western cultures is so key.
Right.
He had to navigate a Chinese work environment,
Yeah.
with its Confucian values, hierarchy, respect for authority, but still foster the creativity and innovation Microsoft was known for.
It wasn't just about bringing a Silicon Valley mindset to China.
No, not at all. It was about bridging that gap.
Exactly.
And he did it with what he called heartware.
Hardware.
Yeah, not just technical expertise, but a team with heart passion, a shared purpose.
I like that.
He even started things like family lunches.
Oh, that's
Team members would share meals, get to know each other personally.
It seems like a small thing, but it says a lot about the culture he was building.
It does, building trust, rapport, and environment for sharing ideas and challenging assumptions.
And under his leadership, Microsoft Research Asia really took off.
It did. They made key innovations, especially in user interface design and natural language processing.
Very cool. But let's jump ahead to his time at Google.
Okay, Google.
This is where things get really interesting. He describes arriving at Google headquarters like stepping into another world.
I've heard about the Google campus.
Ping pong tables, video game machines, a gym, even rooftop swimming pools.
More like a playground than an office.
Right? It sounds amazing.
It's easy to think it's just quirky Silicon Valley stuff.
Yeah.
But Google knew to get top talent, you need an inspiring environment.
Makes sense. Keep people energized, empowered.
Exactly, and Dr. Lee gets that. He goes all out to recreate that Google magic at the Google China office.
So did he have ping pong tables in Beijing?
He did, and more. He brought in a 5-star hotel chef, Romson, to recreate the famous Google cafeteria experience.
Wow, fancy.
And get this, he even had Ronson master Dr. Lee's mother's beef noodle soup recipe.
That's dedication.
Talk about attention to detail.
It's those little touches that matter. But beyond the perks, he had a challenge.
Oh yeah, what was that?
Encouraging a culture of self-management in a team used to hierarchy.
That's tricky, navigating those cultural differences.
It was a balancing act. He wanted to empower engineers to own their projects, voice their opinions.
Which isn't always the norm in traditional Chinese work culture.
Right. But he also understood the importance of respect and hierarchy.
It's finding that balance.
He even held a meeting titled, How to Say No to Your Boss.
Wow, can you imagine that in most companies?
I know it shows his commitment to an open and collaborative environment.
He knew innovation needed psychological safety, that feeling of speaking your mind without fear.
Exactly. And it made a difference.
Did it?
There's a story about an engineer who proposed a longer survey
Okay.
because he felt the headquarters version wasn't relevant to the Chinese team.
Interesting. Taking initiative?
Exactly. That kind of thing wouldn't happen in a rigid structure.
Shows how Dr. Lee encouraged critical thinking, challenging assumptions.
And of course, we can't forget Google's 20% time.
Yes, where engineers work on passion projects.
It led to some of Google's biggest innovations. Gmail, Google News.
For sure, a brilliant idea.
And Dr. Lee brought that to Google China.
So fostering exploration, experimentation, trusting your team to come up with amazing ideas.
Exactly. One example that stands out is the Google Music Project.
Oh yeah, a big undertaking, especially in China with all the music piracy.
Huge challenge. But instead of giving up, they got creative. They partnered with Top 100, a music website with rights to a huge library.
Heart.
And they made copyrighted music free for Chinese users while still paying artists through ads.
A win-win situation.
It shows Dr. Lee's commitment to finding solutions to tough problems.
But even with the success, operating in China wasn't always easy.
Like navigating those nuances,
Yeah.
censorship, government regulations.
Definitely a complex landscape.
And then things escalate when Google gets hit with cyber attacks.
Exposing vulnerabilities.
Big time. It raised serious questions about data security and freedom of information.
That's a tough spot to be in.
It was, and Google had to make a choice.
A difficult one, I imagine.
Do they compromise their values to stay in China?
Or take a stand and potentially leave.
Exactly, a high-stakes dilemma. So Google's at this crossroads. What happens next?
Well, it was a tough choice, but ultimately, Dr. Lee and Google decided they couldn't compromise those values,
Yeah.
freedom of information, transparency, that was core to who they were.
Right, so they pulled out of mainland China.
They did. It was a tough call, especially for Dr. Lee, after putting so much into building Google China.
It must have been, but it really shows his integrity.
Absolutely. He knew that in the long run, a company's reputation, its principles are more important than just short-term gains.
Makes sense. So this leads to him leaving Google.
It does, but it's not the end of his story.
It's like a new chapter.
Exactly. He could have easily gone to another big tech company.
Right, another high-powered position.
But he chooses a different path, something more aligned with his passion for education and mentoring.
So did he finally build that world-class university in China he'd always talked about?
Well, not exactly, but he found other ways to make a big impact in education.
Like what?
He started Innovation Works, which is basically a mentoring platform and incubator for young entrepreneurs in China.
So he's like the tech world's Mr. Keating from Dead Poets Society, inspiring a new generation.
Ha ha ha. I love that analogy. He really does take on that mentor role, guiding these young entrepreneurs, helping them develop their ideas and think big.
That's awesome. And he doesn't just focus on business success, right?
No, he emphasizes using their talents for good, making a positive impact.
I like that.
He wants them to think about the problems they want to solve, the difference they want to make.
And this mentoring goes beyond Innovation Works.
It does. He keeps working with Woshu, that online platform he created to connect with Chinese students.
Oh yeah, the one where he answers tons of emails giving advice.
That's the one. It's amazing, this tech leader taking the time to help students with everything from career choices to personal growth.
Shows that for him, success wasn't just about climbing the corporate ladder.
It wasn't. It was about empowering others, using his knowledge to help them reach their potential.
So looking back at Dr. Kai-Fu Lee's incredible journey, what are the key takeaways?
For me, it's about lifelong learning, adaptability, and staying true to yourself. He constantly reinvented himself, embraced new challenges, never lost sight of his principles.
And it's not just about individual achievement.
Right, it's about the impact you have on others, the people you inspire, the difference you make in the world.
Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive into Dr. Lee's fascinating life,
Yeah,
it makes you think, what will our difference be?
that's the question, isn't it?
How will we use our own skills and passions to make the world a better place?
Something to ponder, for sure.
It is. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been truly inspiring.
It has been. Thanks for having me.